Okay, all set.
Now, does that mean we have the go-ahead to actually start the trial, or are we still waiting?
Let me just double check. Good to go. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, or evening as the case may be, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Donna Heck, and it's my pleasure to preside over these proceedings. I will call the case of United States versus Cara Bassett. Scoring judges, I'm supposed to tell you to look to the two buttons on the lower left of your screen and turn off your audio and video. And I'm supposed to admonish you that those should remain off until the trial ends. You should also have your video set to hide all non-video participants. So supposedly the only people on the screen should be the advocates and me. I will check that that is correct. We're good. Would the attorneys please make their appearances?
From the people, Your Honor.
And your name is James Staub?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is James Staub. Today I serve as the counsel for the government. May I introduce our second chair?
Please.
Ola Judd for the government, Your Honor.
Your Honor, after the defense has stated their appearances, the people have a few preliminary matters we'd like to address.
Got it, but we'll postpone that. Defense, introductions?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Theodora Ciobanu, and I am representing the defendant, Cara Bassett, in today's case. My second chair is Catherine Yu. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon. So does that conclude the appearances?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very good. Mr. Staub, those preliminary matters you mentioned.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd just like the court to highlight evidentiary ruling number 7, stating that exhibits 4 through 33 are pre-admitted and may be used at any time for any purpose.
Okay, so there's no possibility of any objections to those particular exhibits, correct?
No, Your Honor.
Understood. Any other preliminary matters, Mr. Staub?
No, Your Honor. The people are ready to proceed with opening statements.
Ms. Ciobanu, any other preliminary matters?
No preliminary matters from the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, then I will hear opening statement, starting with the prosecution. Make sure you are in speaker view. And please remember, attorneys, mute your audio when the other attorney is speaking. I believe I'm supposed to mute mine as well. So here.
She left a trail. It's August 19, 2017, and the sun is just beginning to rise. As Cara Bassett walks up her driveway, she reflects on the last 7 hours. She's really done it. Killed her husband, driven to a swamp, and dumped his body where no one will find him. She's recounted every last detail in her mind. No weapon, no body, no trace. She was going to get away with this. But what the defendant doesn't realize is that with every step she took, she left a trail. Today, we've charged the defendant, Cara Bassett, with first-degree murder. We bear the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she killed her husband, Don Clark, with malice aforethought. At the end of this trial, we will meet that burden by following the trail the defendant left behind. First, you'll learn of the forensic trail the defendant left behind. You'll learn about the night Don Clark disappeared, how just before midnight, his van pulled out of their driveway and drove miles to a swamp. We'll ask you to pay close attention to that van because Agent Branham will take the stand and tell you that it is key. You'll learn about a rare mud algae combination that was found both on the defendant's boots and that swamp. Together, the evidence will show that while the defendant had her foot on the gas, Dawn Clark lay dead in the trunk. Next, you'll hear the defendant's words leading up to Dawn Clark's disappearance, threatening her husband, claiming that she will take him to his grave, and establishing herself as the sole recipient of his assets should he disappear. Now, we expect the defense to get up here and tell you a different story. But today, members of the jury, it will be your job to distinguish fact from fiction. Because no matter how elaborate their story gets, they can't dispute the facts. It will be clear from the mud on the defendant's boots to the GPS data in that van, the defendant left a trail. Today, members of the jury, we're asking you to look closely, to find the defendant's trail and follow it. And when you do, at the end of this trial, we'll ask you to find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Staub, and I'll hear from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I start, can Your Honor see and hear me okay? May it please the court. Missing pieces. Members of the jury, Your Honor, the theory that James Staub has just outlined for you has missing pieces. On August 18th, 2017, Cara Bassett went to bed early. When she woke up the next morning, her husband of 6 years was gone. He disappeared. In the prosecution's story of what happened that night, there are only missing pieces. Today, it is the government, represented by Mr. Staub, that bears the burden of proof. That means that throughout the course of this trial, they will have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Cara Bassett killed her husband, Dawn Clark, with malice aforethought. This means that she meant to kill her husband. And again, members of the jury, they must prove this to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Fortunately, you will see today that the only trail is the government's trail of missing pieces, the trail of reasonable doubt. First, you will hear that they never recovered Dawn Clark's body. Without a body, there's no autopsy. Without a body, there's no cause of death. Members of the jury, throughout this trial, the government will be unable to prove that Dawn Clark is even dead. They will have failed the first step because they're missing a piece. Today, we expect the government to call Agent Branham to the stand. Agent Branham will tell you that they did not investigate leads about Costa Rica, where Dawn owned property. That on the night of August 18th, Dawn Clark received a suspicious phone call, a phone call that the FBI never followed up on. Those aren't the only pieces missing from the FBI's investigation. They didn't interview all of the park staffers that could have had access to a deadly elephant tranquilizer, carfentanil. You'll hear from Joe Young, someone who worked on a documentary about Cara and Dawn. They were barely interviewed. Not only were they barely interviewed, but their 2,000 hours of footage were unreviewed by the FBI, yet another missing puzzle piece in our investigation. But you will also hear that throughout this investigation, Miss Bassett cooperated. She worked with the police to find her husband. She participated in a dozen voluntary interviews because she loved Dawn Clark. She allowed her life to be sifted through. She talked to the police, and it was all for nothing because the government is missing pieces. Finally, you will hear about Lisa Clark, Dawn's ex-wife. Lisa and Dawn didn't get along. In fact, she would often come to the park and harass him. You'll hear that when Agent Branham went to Lisa Clark's home, she refused to cooperate with the investigation. Where was Lisa Clark August 18th, 2017? Members of the jury, the only trail today, the only trail that you have to see is the trail of missing pieces. Because with those pieces is reasonable doubt, and with reasonable doubt, you cannot convict. At the end of this trial, I'll stand before you. I'm going to ask you to return a verdict based on those missing pieces. A verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
And thank you.
I believe you're muted, Your Honor.
Trying not to be, but here goes. Incidentally, if you spot me having any technical issues, jump right in. If you spot me having any issues with a particular gladiator procedure, just jump right in. I know high school mock trial pretty well, but this is certainly the first Zoom mock trial that I've ever done. It's what, your third? So you've got the jump on me. Okay.
I believe you're muted again, Your Honor.
The problem is when I go over to look at my script, I lose the muting. Everybody's supposed to be in gallery view, is my understanding. Okay, that probably includes me. Hold on. Terrific. Okay, then the government may call their first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The people call Detective Agent Branham. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Please.
Good morning. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I'm Senior FBI Special Agent Stephanie Branham.
How long have you served on the FBI?
I've been an FBI agent for over 17 years now. In that time, I've investigated over 100 cases, including kidnapping, bank robbery, and murder.
Well, how are you involved in today's case?
I was the lead investigator on the disappearance of Dawn Clark. I commanded a team of FBI special agents, as well as some local officers.
How were you first notified of Mr. Clark's disappearance?
On August 25th, 2017, we received a report from Kara Bassett, the defendant, that Mr. Clark was missing. She told us he disappeared a week before on August 18th, and our investigation began.
I want to give the jury a look inside your investigation. How did it begin?
I started by interviewing the defendant at her house at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park.
Did she tell you her connection to Dawn Clark?
Yes, the defendant and Mr. Clark were married and they lived together at the park.
Well, did you perform a search?
Yes, of course. We canvassed the park, including some of the surrounding locations near it.
From this search, did you find anything to indicate what happened to Dawn Clark after he disappeared?
We did. We found an abandoned white Chevrolet Express van that the defendant later told us belonged to Mr. Clark.
Why was finding this van significant?
We discovered that the van had a self-activated GPS tracker. This data allowed us to track the path of the van the night that Mr. Clark disappeared.
You said that the data showed the path of the van the night he disappeared. I want to give the jury a visual of that path. Ms. Judd, would you please display what's already in evidence as Exhibit 31? Do you know what this is?
Yes, this is the data from the car the night Mr. Clark disappeared.
Let's start at the beginning of that night. When does the van's data begin?
As you can see here at 11:17 p.m., the van departed from Dawn Clark and Kara Bassett's residence.
Do you know where Dawn Clark and the defendant were at just before that?
Yes, we were able to recover the phone records that show that they both started out at the residence, which is located at the Elephant Park.
Were you able to track Dawn Clark's location data as the van was leaving their home?
Unfortunately, no. Dawn Clark's cell signal from his phone cut off at 11:14 p.m., which is about 3 minutes before his van left the house.
So where did the van go after it left their home?
The data shows that the van drove 139 miles due east from their home and arrived at 1:26 a.m. at the Big Gum Swamp,
And how long was the van there?
approximately 44 minutes.
Well, let's make sure the jury is tracking here. You told us that just before midnight, the defendant and Don Clark were together at their home. And then Don Clark's cell signal cut off, and then his van drove from their home to a swamp. Do we have any evidence to indicate if Don Clark was in that van?
Yes, we do.
Ms. Judd, would you please display what's already in evidence as Exhibit 5? Did you rely on Exhibit 5, the forensics report, to determine this?
Yes, the forensics report aided our investigation.
So what evidence indicates that Don Clark was in his van?
The forensics report concluded that 6 hairs from Don Clark's head were found in the van, but they weren't in the driver's seat. They were on the floor in the back of the van.
So if you found Don Clark's hair on the floor in the back of the van, do we have any evidence to indicate who was in the front driving the van?
We do. The forensic evidence indicates that the defendant was driving the van. Our forensic analysis found mud.
Speculation. If I may elaborate, Your Honor?
I'm sorry, I must have missed something important here. You objected?
I did, Your Honor. I objected.
Totally did not hear that objection. I just heard, I don't know if the speakers are just going one at a time or what, but what is your objection?
Your Honor, I object to speculation to the fact that the witness just testified that Cara Bassett was driving the van.
Mr. Staub?
Your Honor, I believe the direct testimony of this witness is that the evidence that she found in the forensics report tells us that the defendant was driving the van. She's not speculating directly as to who's driving the van. She's using it based on the evidence.
Anything
If I
further?
may make an offer of-
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor. Technically, the forensic report states that the evidence that I believe that the government will bring in is that the forensic report will state that there was algae on the driver's side pedal, algae that was also on Cara Bassett's boots. However, insufficient foundation has been laid to even show that Ms. Bassett was wearing these boots on the night of August 18th, 2017.
Okay, let's proceed this way. As I understand it, the witness is about to testify to essentially a conclusion based on the evidence that the witness is going to go on to discuss further. Is that correct, Mr. Staub?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, based on what's already in evidence as Exhibit 5.
Okay. I'm going to let her give that testimony subject to a motion to strike by you, Ms. Ciobanu, if it still appears to be speculative after we've heard the additional evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so at this point, it's overruled, subject to a subsequent motion to strike.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Agent Branham, did you get a chance to finish your answer?
No, I'll continue. As I was saying, our forensic analysis found mud from Big Gum Swamp on the pedals of the van, and that same mud matched up with the mud and algae found on the defendant's boots, which does indicate she was driving the van.
So,
Again, objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Okay,
Your Honor,
I'm going to overrule that objection. I understand that we don't know for sure if she was wearing those boots that night, but algae from a place 136 miles away, I think it was, is still probative. So that's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, Agent, what else did the forensics report determine about the mud found on the defendant's boots?
See, the forensics report described 2 separate findings. One, that the algae found at Big Gum Swamp is a very rare combination. And 2, the diatoms from the swamp, that's the microscopic algae, they were both a very close match to the defendant's boots down to the atomic level. If you put those 2 things together, it's almost unquestionable that the defendant was at Big Gum Swamp at one point.
So you've told us that forensics places the defendant at the swamp. Where did the defendant say she was that night?
The defendant claimed she was at home the entire night. She denied ever going to the swamp.
So, Agent, how did all of this information affect your investigation into the disappearance of Don Clark?
Well, I mean, at this point, given all the pieces of evidence we had, this was no longer a missing persons case. We had all the pieces, and it quickly became a murder investigation with the defendant as our primary suspect, given the forensic evidence.
Now, Agent, I have to ask, did you find any evidence to indicate that the defendant would benefit from Don Clark's death?
We did. We have a power of attorney document that shows that about 3 months before Don Clark went missing, the defendant arranged to inherit all of his assets in the event of his disappearance. According to this document, she would be the only one to benefit from Don Clark's death.
Were you able to determine how much Don Clark's assets were worth?
Yes, all of his assets included money, investments, cars, and real estate, among other things. And based off of that information, it added up to almost $8 million.
Agent, did you make an arrest in this case?
Yes, I did. I arrested the defendant, Cara Bassett, for the murder of Don Clark.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I start, can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
May it please the court. We've talked a little about what you discovered, but I'd like to go into a little bit of what was missing from your investigation. At the park, you found no blood, right?
We didn't find any blood at the Greater Elephant Tallahassee Park, no.
And you didn't find any signs of violence.
No, we did not.
Now, you reviewed all the camera footage available, correct?
Yes, and none of it proved to be relevant or helpful in today's case.
Exactly. Even with the footage, you didn't find evidence of an argument between Dawn and Cara on August 18th, 2017, correct?
No, not on August 18th, 2017, but we do have evidence that they argued constantly.
You're getting a bit ahead of me, and that wasn't exactly my question. I just asked you whether you found evidence of an argument between Dawn and Cara on August 18th, 2017. And the answer to that question is no, right?
Like I said, no, we did not find evidence for August 18th, 2017.
Now, you also found Dawn's van at the Carrie Bell Leon Airport, correct?
Correct.
In this van, you found no wallet.
No, we weren't able to recover Don Clark's wallet or phone.
Exactly, you couldn't find his keys either, right?
No, we couldn't recover his keys.
Most importantly, you didn't find Don Clark's body in that van, right?
No, his body was not in the van.
In fact, you never found Don's body. Is that correct, Agent Branham?
No, we didn't find Don's body.
But you searched the Big Gum Swamp with trained dogs, right?
Yes, but dogs can't swim to the bottom of a swamp, so we didn't get to that part.
It's true, but even with these dogs, you couldn't find Don's body. Is that correct?
Like I said, the dogs were able to search the dry land. We tried to search the deeper waters of the swamp, but we couldn't get to all of it. Regardless, we did search the swamp as best as we could, and we did not find the body.
So you couldn't conduct an autopsy.
No, that would require a body.
Exactly, and you couldn't identify a cause of death without the body either, correct?
Correct.
You also talked a bit about mud on the driver's side pedal of the van on direct, correct?
Yes, it matched what was on the defendant's boots, both of which are matched with the algae found at Big Gum Swamp.
You just said that it was a match with the defendant's boots, but Agent Branham, your forensic team never tested samples from the swamp against samples from the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park, correct?
That is correct. However, if you read the rest of the report, it says that the algae from Big Gum Swamp is an extremely rare form of algae, as I had explained earlier. So it is a very rare possibility that it would be a match from something that was almost 200 miles away.
You just said that if I read the rest of the report, but in your report, it says it is not certain it came from the Big Gum Swamp, correct?
It says it's not certain over here, but in the methodology section of the report, it says that the samples and conclusions made can be determined to a scientific degree of scientific certainty. So it is scientifically certain.
Now, you've just said it's scientifically certain, but the report that you relied on, that little highlighted line right there, it says, this is not certain, yes or no?
Yeah, it says this is not certain.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Dawn's phone records now. You reviewed these phone records as part of your investigation, correct?
Yes, I did.
And on August 18th, 2017 at 2 p.m., Don texted his wife, right?
Yes, he did.
He said, want to talk to you about a trip to CR?
I believe that's what it says.
And Don owned property in Costa Rica, correct?
That is correct.
Later at 6 o'clock, Don Clark received a phone call from Costa Rica, correct?
Yes.
And he called this number back.
I don't think he called it back. I think he was on the phone with them for 52 minutes.
My apologies, but exactly, he was on the phone with them for 52 minutes, right?
Yes.
You didn't investigate this number.
We didn't investigate the number, no.
You have no clue who called Don Clark, right?
We do not.
Finally, Miss Yu, if you could please pull up the timeline. Oh. At 11:14, Don sent another text to Kara Bassett, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And this text said, going out for a while.
Yes, it does say that.
The GPS records show Don's van leaving the park at 11:17 p.m., correct?
Yep, about 3 minutes later.
Exactly. I'd like to talk to you about Miss Tuminelli's statement. No, Miss Tuminelli is Don's lawyer, right?
That's correct. She provided a letter as well as an interview.
Exactly. In this letter, she told you that Don planned to purchase additional property in Costa Rica.
Yes, she said he was planning on purchasing some properties, but he disappeared before it could happen.
But she says he wanted to purchase this property with off-the-books cash.
Yes, that's what it says.
Cash Kara Bassett didn't know about.
Yep, it says that as well.
And you never found this cash?
No, because it also says that he wasn't able to purchase the property because he disappeared before the transaction could occur.
So that's a yes, you never found this off-the-books cash.
We did not find the cash that they were planning to use, no.
But you had Miss Bassett's full cooperation throughout this investigation, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
She sat down for multiple interviews?
Yes, she did.
She allowed you to search her phone?
Yes.
You found that her phone never left the park on August 18th, 2017.
Yes, to be clear, that is her phone that didn't leave the park.
So that's a yes to my question.
Like I said, yes, her phone did not leave the park.
But Don's ex-wife, Lisa Clark, did not cooperate to investigation.
No, I tried to interview Lisa Clark, however, she refused.
In fact, when she refused, she said, that piece of expletive deserved to die, correct?
Yes, I believe that's what she said.
And you were unable to find an alibi for Lisa Clark?
I did not interview Lisa Clark, so I have no knowledge of whether or not she has an alibi.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Agent, the cross-examiner just asked you a little bit about Costa Rica. Did you ever investigate the possibility that Don Clark could be alive in Costa Rica?
Yes, we did. As you see, Don Clark's car drove to the airport on August 18th, 2017, and his private plane never left that airport. It was never seen by Costa Rican authorities at the airports in Costa Rica. His house was vacant there, and the investigative team in Costa Rica also conducted—
Objection, Your Honor, narrative.
Mr. Staub?
Your Honor, this witness is just answering my question about her investigating Don Clark being in Costa Rica.
Yeah, I'd say at this point it's just a couple of sentences. I'm going to let her continue it, but feel free to object if it becomes even longer. Overruled.
The Costa Rican authorities also conducted a thorough search in Costa Rica for, I believe, almost 4 to 6 months, and Don Clark did not turn up at all.
Now, you were also asked about a woman named Lisa Clark. Now, I want to talk about that a little further. Ms. Judd, could you please display what's already in evidence as exhibit 26? Do you know what this is?
Yes, this is the Chevrolet Express van that was found at the airport, the same car that was driven the night Mr. Clark disappeared.
Did you ever search this van for fingerprints?
Yes, I'm sorry, we did. We searched the van for fingerprints, and the only fingerprints that turned up were the defendant, Kara Bassett, as well as Kelsey Stebbins, a park employee who worked with Mr. Clark on a daily basis.
So just to be clear, Agent, did you ever find Lisa Clark's fingerprints in that van?
No, the only fingerprints in that van belonged to the defendant and Kelsey Stebbins.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Is recross allowed?
No, Your Honor, I don't believe it is.
Okay. Then is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor, may the witness be excused.
Okay, you are excused. Thank you very much. The prosecution may call their next witness.
The prosecution has no further witnesses, Your Honor. At this time, we rest.
The defense may call their first witness then.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense calls Joe Young to the stand. Before I begin, can you see and hear me okay?
Oh yeah, perfectly clear.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Young.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Young?
I work on documentaries. Some of my recent works include The Real Housewives of Reality Hills and some documentaries about sushi rice.
How did you get into this work?
Well, I went out to Hollywood, went to some auditions, you know the drill, but they said that my face would be better behind the camera. So there it is.
Were you working on any projects related to today's case?
Yeah, I was working on the Elephant Queen documentary for Kara Bassett.
As part of this Elephant Queen documentary, what did you do?
Well, you know, I went to the park all the time, interviewed Miss Bassett, took videos of her working with the elephants, with Don, wearing her zany outfits.
How long were you around Kara and Dawn?
I'd say about 2.5 years. I mean, I feel like they were part of my family.
After these 2 years, did you have a chance to observe their relationship?
Oh yeah, of course. Pretty much every day. See them talk to each other, you know, do their usual activities.
How would you characterize this relationship?
Oh, I mean, I'd say it was loving. It's like me and my wife, Betty. I mean, we have our spats from time to time, but we've been married for 20 years now, and we're happy. We love each other.
After Dawn's disappearance, how did Kara seem?
Well, I mean, she seemed sad. She seemed to take it hard.
After 2 years, how much footage did you have of Dawn and Kara?
Gosh, a lot. 2,000 hours, somewhere around there.
Did the police ever review these 2,000 hours of footage?
No, they never asked me about it. But frankly, I'm kind of glad about that. It's more meat for the documentary.
Did the police even interview you at all, Mr. Young?
I wouldn't really call it an interview. I mean, I guess they asked me a couple of questions, but they didn't really hear anything specific.
After Dawn disappeared, did you continue filming for your documentary?
Well, yeah, of course. Kara wanted me to continue filming her. She said it was good publicity for the elephant park.
So, were you able to observe the FBI investigation?
Oh, yeah, of course. She also wanted me to film that. So I took video of the FBI doing all the normal, you know, FBI stuff, investigating, that kind of stuff.
When you were filming them, did you see the FBI interview every park staffer?
They interviewed everybody except for Kelsey Stebbins and Nate Gosson. Oh, I never saw them interview those two.
Are you familiar with the elephant tranquilizer carfentanil used at the park?
Yeah, it was an elephant trank for the elephants. You know, one of them got sick. They'd stab it and, you know, do the surgery or whatever they had to do. But I stayed away from that stuff. I didn't want to get poisoned.
Based on your observations, how many park staffers had access to this tranquilizer?
It was about a dozen, maybe 12 or so. Kind of a lot, actually.
On August 18th, 2017, were you at the park?
Oh, yeah, you know, I was just doing my usual bit and filming Miss Bassett, like I always do.
Did anything seem off about Kara Bassett?
No, not that I remember. I mean, she seemed normal. And good old Kara.
Did anything seem strange about Don Clark?
Well, yeah, just his behavior on the night in question.
What was so strange about it?
Well, see, I was standing next to him. We were filming something for the documentary. I don't know, elephants doing elephant stuff. And he got this text message. His face turned all white as a ghost. And he ran out of there like he was late for a lobster special at Buca de Beppo, something like that.
Did you ever speak to Don Clark again?
No, unfortunately, that was the last time I ever saw him because I had to leave on a trip for Mexico.
Did you ever investigate Don's disappearance on your own?
Well, yeah, I went down to Costa Rica, see if he was alive down there. Plus, the beach is super nice.
Did you ever enter any houses that you believed to be Don's?
Yeah, I actually kind of snuck in the window of his vacation house and, see what was going on.
What did you find in this vacation house?
Well, when I got in there was a fan going. And there wasn't any food in his refrigerator, but it seemed clean, spotless, unlike my house, right? And he had some clothes in his closet.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation as to how this witness knows that there's no food in the fridge and the fan was in Don Clark's house.
Ms. Ciobanu?
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, I believe that this objection comes late because the witness has just testified that it was Don's house and therefore can testify as to what he saw in it.
Arguably, but arguably not. Do you have a response on the merits?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness was just about to testify that the clothes that he found in the closet belonged to Don Clark.
I would prefer that we go in order, but sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. I'll let him so testify, subject to a motion to strike by Mr. Staub.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you find any evidence that this house was Don Clark's?
Well, yeah, when I walked into his house, I looked in the closets, like you do. I saw some clothes in there, all kinds of different outfits, jerseys, shirts, all that stuff. And they all belonged to Don.
What else did you find in this house?
Well, yeah, there was a fan going back and forth, kind of kept the place cool, which I liked. And then it was real clean in there. No dust or anything. It was way nicer than my house, let me tell you.
Finally, I'd like to discuss Don's other ex-wife. Are you familiar with Lisa Clark?
Yeah, she was his ex-wife before he married Cara Bassett, if I recall correctly.
Did you have a chance to observe Don and Lisa's relationship?
Oh, yeah. It was rocky, to say the least. They didn't get along so well.
You said that it was rocky. Do you have any examples of this?
Well, yeah, there was this one time she was yelling, "I'll wipe you off the face of the earth. You'll be sorry." Something like that. And then the police got called. It was a whole mess.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross then.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, you talked on direct examination. You told us that you were filming a documentary about the defendant.
Yeah, it was called the Elephant Queen. It was about Cara Bassett and elephants.
And as a part of your filming for that documentary, you actually recorded interviews with the defendant?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Like confessional type things. Hey, Cara, how you doing? That kind of stuff.
Well, let's take a look at some of the defendant's words. You filmed a video of the defendant on June 15th, 2017?
Yeah, I filmed a couple videos from that day.
Specifically, you filmed Exhibit 36.
Yeah, that was one of the videos I filmed. Again, it was one of those little confessional things.
Could you look at Exhibit 36 in your electronic notebook and confirm for us that this is a video you filmed?
Yes, I filmed that video. Yeah, I was the only producer on the thing, so I was filming all the videos. It was a lot of work.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 36 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted.
Ms. Jed, would you please play Exhibit 36 for the jury?
Oh, I'm steaming. This is a business, not a charity. As long as it's my money, we'll run it that way. That's what Don said to me. Can you believe that? We'll see how this ends.
I want to talk about another interview you made. You also filmed another interview with the defendant on June 15th, 2017.
Oh, yeah, there were a bunch of interviews from that day. Which one are you talking about?
Specifically, Exhibit 38.
Oh, yeah, that was another one that I filmed, of course.
And in that video, the defendant actually says, "I will take people to their graves if I
Your
have..."
Honor, objection, facts not in evidence.
Which fact?
The fact of the statement in the video, Your Honor.
Well, he's not assuming anything in his question. He's going to, I assume, ask whether that was said or not, correct, Mr. Staub?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's overruled.
So, Mr. Young, in this exhibit, the defendant actually says, "I will take people to their graves if I have to." Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I think she said something to that effect.
Well, I want to talk about something else you witnessed around the same time. Now, you personally witnessed, just a month or two before Don Clark disappeared, a fight between him and the defendant.
Yeah, of course. That was in August of 2017. Yeah, they were going at it, like they do. But I think Ms. Bassett picked up a vase, like threw it at the wall or something like that. I mean, couples get into it sometimes.
That's right. Mr. Young, the defendant actually became violent towards Don Clark.
Your Honor, objection, character evidence.
Who's to be heard, Mr. Staub?
Your Honor, we're not offering it to prove that the defendant was violent on one occasion and then the other, just that when they were arguing with each other, this provided a motive for the defendant.
Then why does it matter whether the argument was violent?
Your Honor, just to show that this witness became violent when they were arguing.
Characteristically, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah,
May I?
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can bring out the argument. It's the violence that has been objected to and sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Young, this argument that you witnessed was about their business, right?
Yeah, it was, how should we run the elephant park? Kara wanted to run it one way, Don wanted to run it another way. It's like business partners get into it.
Now, Mr. Young, I'd like to move on to your investigation you talked about on direct examination. You actually went to Costa Rica looking for Don Clark.
Oh, yeah. Plus, it gave me a great excuse to get a good tan.
Well, you went to Costa Rica, but you never found Don Clark, did you?
No, I never found him, no.
And the house you went to, there wasn't food in the fridge?
No, there wasn't anything in the fridge. Let me tell you, if there was, I would have eaten it.
There was no toiletries in the bathroom?
No, I mean, I guess Don Clark had bad breath.
And you went back multiple times to his house just to make sure that your investigation was thorough?
Yeah, I stayed outside his house a little bit. I mean, it's convenient. It's right on the beach, so I can get a great tan and look at the house.
Is that a yes, Mr. Young?
Oh, yeah, of course. I was outside his house.
And when you went back multiple times, you still never saw Don Clark?
No, I never saw him, no. I did show some of the people around town, his picture, and some of them thought, maybe they'd recognized him, but I never saw him myself.
Mr. Young, I wasn't asking you about a picture you showed people there. I was asking about when you went to his house multiple times that week. And during that time, you never found Don Clark.
Oh, no, I didn't. If I'd found him, he'd be here hanging out with me.
Well, I'd like to move on to another video you filmed of the defendant. We talked a little bit about videos you filmed before Don Clark's disappearance, but I want to look at one you filmed later on, Exhibit 44.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, I think that was the one one of the ones from December.
Yes, this is a video you filmed on December 24th, 2017.
Oh, yeah, of course I remember it. I think Miss Bassett, she got a Christmas tree in the picture, something like that.
And would you look at Exhibit 44 on your electric notebook and confirm that this is the video you filmed on that date?
Oh, yeah, no, this is definitely that video. Yeah, it's my footage. I got a specific style.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 44 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Ms. Judd, would you please play the exhibit for the jury?
It's Christmas Eve. Don's not here, and I miss him very much. I feel his absence every single day. And it's difficult to find the strength to go on.
For context, Mr. Young, that was a few months after Don Clark disappeared.
Yeah, that was about 4, maybe 5 months after he disappeared, something like that.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. First, on cross-examination, you were asked about Kara and Dawn. How would you compare Kara and Dawn's relationship to Lisa and Dawn's relationship?
Well, I think the best way I can say it is they were like polar opposites. You got Kara and Don over there, they love each other. Occasionally they might get into it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's all love and affection. And then you got Lisa and Don. No love lost there. They just go at it crazy.
Did Lisa ever threaten Dawn Clark?
Yeah, I kind of already talked about that, but yeah, she said something like, I'll wipe you off the face of the earth if I have to. You'll be sorry.
Again, you investigated Dawn's disappearance on your own?
Oh, yeah, I went down to Costa Rica.
What evidence did you find that he wasn't dead?
Well, there were kind of three main things. There was the fan that was going, there was his place, it seemed, real clean, and then, of course, there was his clothes in the closet.
Finally, based on your perception, was the FBI investigation complete?
I guess it was kind of complete, but it seemed a little bit sloppy to me,
Objection, Your Honor, speculation and inadmissible expert opinion.
Ms. Ciobanu?
Yes, Your Honor. On direct examination, Mr. Young testified that he observed and filmed the FBI investigation. Furthermore, Mr. Young testified that he was barely interviewed by the FBI, on top of having 2,000 hours of footage that the FBI never reviewed. Based on this, he can testify that their investigation was missing pieces.
Well, can he, or is that something that you would really need a law enforcement expert for?
Your Honor, I do not believe so. I think it's rationally based on his perception as someone who observed the investigation.
Anything further, Mr. Staub?
Yes, Your Honor, I just add that this witness can testify of what he observed the FBI do or what he observed they didn't do, but he can't testify as to the quality of the investigation since he doesn't have the expertise in that field.
Mr. Ciobanu, Mr. Staub has convinced me that the jurors can decide whether for example, failure to view the video was or was not an adequate investigation, but I don't believe this witness can draw the conclusion that it was not. So that's sustained.
Did the FBI ever review your 2,000 hours of footage?
No, they didn't. I can't believe it. They didn't want to see any of it?
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, the defense may call their next, I'm sorry, is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you are excused, Mr. Young. Now the defense may call their next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense rests its case in chief.
Very good. Sorry, just checking my script here. I'm supposed to tell everyone to switch back to speaker view, and then you may begin your closing arguments, starting with the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor.
That includes me. I better switch. Okay.
May I proceed?
Whenever you're ready.
She left a trail. When a murderer has months to plan out the particulars of their crime, we often have to piece together a complicated puzzle to know exactly what they did. If they do leave a trail, it can be very difficult to find. But members of the jury, that wasn't the case today. You see, we have a literal trail here, Ms. Judd, with this map. It shows exactly where Dawn Clark's van went on the night of August 18th. Now, we spent a long time discussing the details of this map and how we know this is the defendant's trail, but in light of what the defense is claiming, I think we need to take a look at the trail itself. Now, they want you to believe that Dawn Clark may have taken off on his own, that he might still be alive in Costa Rica. But members of the jury, you'd have to assume that he drove 139 miles out of his way to a swamp. To do what? Sightsee? Members of the jury, that's not just unreasonable, it's plain absurd. The reason the trail looks the way it does is because it isn't Dawn Clark's. It isn't Lisa Clark's, it's the defendant's trail. She left a trail. Today we had to prove that to you beyond a reasonable doubt. We've met that burden for two reasons. We know where the defendant was, and we know why she was there. First, we know where the defendant was. Here, we'll have to recall the testimony of Agent Branham. Agent Branham told us about mud she found at 3 specific locations: Don Clark's van, the defendant's boots, and the Big Gum Swamp. Now, I'll admit, when I first heard this, I didn't think it'd be that significant. I mean, I got mud in my backyard when it rains, but that doesn't mean that I killed Don Clark. But Agent Branham told you that this trail goes much deeper than that. You see, we know that the mud on the defendant's boots came from the Big Gum Swamp. How do we know this? Because the science tells us so. You see, in each of these 3 samples, 2 types of algae were identified. Algae that was almost never found in combination. And if that wasn't specific enough, Agent Branham told us that scientists tested these mud samples down to the atomic level and confirmed they were identical. So already it's unreasonable to believe that mud on Miss Bassett's boots in the swamp could be found 140 miles away at a park. But just to be sure, we had it tested. And the same atomic analysis found nothing from the elephant park that was found on the mud samples of the defendant's boots and the Big Gum Swamp. We know she was at the swamp. Now, the defense, they haven't brought any scientific evidence in opposition to this, because they can fight fact with fiction all they want, but they can't dispute the science. We know where the defendant was that night. She was at the Big Gum Swamp. Which moves me to my second point. We know why she was there. She was there to kill. Members of the jury, we know that the defendant wanted control of his business because she told you so. She told you that she would be willing to take people to their graves. And that's what she said on camera. In her private life, the defendant had frequent arguments with the defendant about their business. So what happened when Don Clark disappeared? She gained control of all of his assets, $8 million of assets. Now, the defense will say that we have missing pieces in our case, blanks that we need to fill in, things we don't know for sure. But members of the jury, the only piece in this case that matters, we know where it is. You see, the only question in today's case is, where was the defendant on the night of August 18th? Was she at her home sleeping, like the defense said? Or was she at the Big Gum Swamp dumping Don Clark's body? Our case begins and ends with this question because of how the defendant answers this question. She was interviewed. Have you ever been to the Big Gum Swamp? No, I've never been. You see, members of the jury, if we can prove that she was at the swamp that night, then whatever she was doing there must have been so bad that she couldn't breathe a word of it to the FBI. She was there dumping Don Clark's body. And so the prosecution will say, we don't have a significant murder weapon. But members of the jury, if we can prove that Cara Bassett was dumping her husband's body into a swamp at 2 a.m., does it really matter if she used a syringe of chemicals or a knife or an electrical cord to choke him? We followed the defendant's trail, and it ends where Don Clark did. Because when the FBI came knocking and the defendant lied to cover her tracks, she thought she was in the clear. But we know she left a trail to find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Thank you.
Thank you. And defense, closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I start, can you see and hear me okay? May it please the court. Missing pieces. That's all the prosecution has shown you today. Missing pieces. Whether in the FBI investigation or Dawn's physical body, their entire case falls apart because of the missing pieces. Today, the government, represented by James Staub, has had to prove their burden beyond a reasonable doubt. This is the highest burden in the criminal justice system and the most difficult one to meet. And today, they failed to meet it because of the missing puzzle pieces. Today, the defense doesn't have to prove anything. We don't have to show you any theory about Dawn Clark. We just have to show reasonable doubt. Let's look at the picture that the government has tried to paint. We'll see that it falls apart because of the missing pieces. First, where is Dawn Clark's body? Members of the jury, you've heard Agent Branham testify that they never found Dawn Clark's body. And after searching the Big Gum Swamp with trained dogs, there's no body. Without a body, there's no autopsy. Without an autopsy, you can't determine if Dawn's dead or if this murder ever occurred. So the jury, this is reasonable doubt and a missing piece in their investigation. Next, you have Dawn's properties in Costa Rica. Properties that Joe Young, not the FBI, Joe Young had to investigate. Properties that show evidence of Dawn's life. His clothes were in the closet, the place was spotless, and a fan was on. Not only this, but on August 18th, 2017, just hours before he disappeared, Dawn Clark received a suspicious phone call. A phone call that the FBI never investigated. A phone call that they were missing. The next missing puzzle piece are the 2,000 hours of footage. Kara and Dawn. Mr. Staub has shown you some exhibits of Kara Bassett. But here's the thing. When they arrested Miss Bassett, the FBI had not watched these videos. The FBI was missing 2,000 hours of footage. Another missing piece. Next, we have lack of interviews. At least a dozen park staffers had access to carfentanil, a deadly substance. I've heard from Joe Young, who carefully watched the investigation, that at least 2 park staffers were never interviewed. Yet another missing puzzle piece. Next, we have no soil testing. You may think that this is insignificant, but the fact is the government has built their entire case around a missing puzzle piece. Their own forensic report says it is not certain that this mud came from the swamp because they failed to do soil testing of mud at an elephant park. 100-acre large elephant park, they didn't test a single sample of mud. Their entire case is a missing puzzle piece. Finally, we have Kara Bassett. Kara Bassett, who loved her husband, Dawn Clark, had a close relationship. After his death, she was devastated. She loved her husband. Not only that, but she fully cooperated with the investigation. It's a factor that the FBI failed to consider. For a dozen interviews. Not only that, but she allowed them to search her phone. She allowed them to look at texts she made, and she let them track this phone, and they found that on August 18th, 2017, Kara Bassett's phone never left the park. She helped the FBI because all she wanted to do was find her husband. Finally, we have perhaps the biggest missing puzzle piece of all, Lisa Clark. Lisa's was Dawn's ex-wife, and as you've heard from Joe Young, there was no love lost between them. She'd come to the park threatening Dawn. At one point, the police had to be called. Police had to be called because she said, "I'll wipe you off the face of the earth. You'll be sorry." Members of the jury, when the FBI came knocking at her door, Lisa Clark refused to cooperate. There's no alibi for her, and because there is reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, all the government has are missing pieces. And when you look at these pieces, all you see is their case, unsupported by evidence. As I've said earlier, the prosecution has a pretty high burden to meet. Have have to prove everything to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, we haven't had to show anything to you today, but we've shown you reasonable doubt. His body, a missing piece. Costa Rica, another missing piece. The lack of interviews, another missing piece. No soil testing, a missing piece. 2,000 hours of footage, a missing piece. Kara's love for her husband, a piece they failed to consider. Kara's full cooperation. Why would a murderer cooperate? Finally, Lisa Clark, the biggest missing piece of all. Members of the jury, the only trail here is the trail of missing pieces that the government leaves behind, a trail that cannot lead to a conviction. We haven't had to prove to you anything today. We've had to show to you that Don Clark is here. We haven't had to show to you that he went to Costa Rica. We don't have to show to you that his wife murdered him. All we've shown is reasonable doubt. To the jury, their case is littered with reasonable doubt because they're missing pieces. So we ask you, look at the trail that the prosecution has painted for you and ask yourselves, is this really reasonable? I stand before you today and I ask you to return a verdict consistent with the fact that there are missing pieces in their case. In fact, that their entire case is based around a missing piece. Return a verdict consistent with the truth. A verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Mr. Staub, you get to rebut, I believe.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
Defense just told us that we have several pieces of reasonable doubt. But I want to look at the evidence for a second. We know the defendant left a trail. We have a literal trail with a GPS of that van. Ms. Judd, would you please display what's in evidence as Exhibit 26? This is the van that the defendant drove that night. Agent Branham told us that she analyzed that van for fingerprints, and she only found Kelsey Stebbin, who was a park employee and was gone at that time, and the defendant's fingerprints. If anyone else drove this van, they would have left fingerprints. The only person that could have driven that van was the defendant. She may not have known it when she lied to the FBI, but she left a trail. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe you do not get any further rebuttal, Ms. Ciobanu, correct?
I do not, Your Honor.
Understood. So let me just double check my script. The judges should please complete their ballots and then click submit. And I'll ask everyone to stay on until all the ballots have been submitted, and then we'll do brief comments. Okay, I have